Okay, Jai Hind everyone. Uh, I'm sure most of you may be aware that we are conducting a mega seminar on 11th March 26 at Manisha Center, and that is also on India's neighborhood. In that, we are covering specifically Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. Not that other neighbors like Myanmar are not important, but the turmoils there are much more as compared to any other country, and time available also does not allow us there in that event to deliberate. So you will find a fair amount of glimpse of the issues which may come up for discussion on that day with presence of Dr. Tripathi, who has been kind enough to spare his time when he has come to Delhi from University of Goa. I had a chance meeting with him and with the effort of Dr. Monojit Das. We met him in a National Disaster Management Seminar in the premises of Glasgow organized by us. So without much ado, I will now request Kaltushar Anand to give out the credentials of the speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Rahul Tripathi is Professor of Political Science at the D.D. Kaushambi School of Social Sciences and Behavioral Studies, Goa University. He has been teaching and conducting research there since 2000. His teaching and supervision spans international relations, Indian foreign policy, international political economy, South Asian politics, and human rights. He has guided numerous postgraduate and doctorate researchers. Professor Tripathi has served in several academic and administrative leadership roles. He has also been visiting faculty of Nihon University, Japan, and adjunct faculty at the Naval War College, Goa. His research focus on international political, economic, regional cooperation in South Asia and Indian foreign policy. He has authored and edited books, namely Monetary and Payment Cooperation in South Asia, Towards Freedom in South Asia, Democratization, Peace and Regional Cooperation. His popular writings has appeared in leading newspapers and he has been interviewed by BBC and other leading channels. Today he'll be speaking on the topic new, new realities, old fault lines, Indian neighborhood in transition. Over.
All yours, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, to Director General, Sir, Tushar, Manojit, for making this happen. It's indeed always special whenever I come to CENJOWS, and I believe this is my third interaction here. And I've seen the institution grow and evolve, and with the MOU that has been signed between Goa University and CENJOWS, we are all set to acquire greater heights. I'm also happy to share with you that the joint project that we are working on India and global cyber governance is also taking a very, very complete shape, and that is the prime reason for my visit here. But then when this opportunity came to give a talk on this particular theme, the topic incidentally was decided by Monojit himself, who gave me a list, and I found this to be very, very interesting. New realities and old fault lines, India's neighborhood in transition. So let me first tell you where I come from. I mean, in the sense, what is my position as far as the neighborhood is concerned. And I consider myself to be an optimist. You can make out what was read from my CV that I specialize in South Asian studies. So we belong to a category called Sarco optimists. So there are sarcastics who don't believe in the idea of Sark, and there are Sarco optimists. So I mean, I'm a firm believer in the ability of the South Asian region to still come together, achieve a lot by togetherness rather than being distant. And I say that not because of a sense of idealism that we were one historically, culturally, geographically, because of a very, very pragmatic reason. that in whatever India aspires to do in terms of our global profile or in terms of our domestic engagement, the kind of neighborhood that we have is going to be very, very crucial or critical. Neighborhood can become a building block to what you aspire to do globally. Neighborhood also can become a big stumbling block. So you just cannot ignore the neighborhood. As the famous saying goes that, well, you can change your friends, but you can't change your neighbors. So the reality of living in a neighborhood is something that any country has to confront. And in that sense, India's neighborhood is very, very unique and distinct in that sense. And being an optimist, I still take the position that there is a lot that can be done by taking the neighborhood along. Yes, how to take this very, very complicated, complex neighborhood along is a big challenge. And that's where the title becomes very, very relevant. That there are old fault lines which are already existing. There are new realities that are emerging. So how do we cope up with this kind of a neighborhood in transition? So in the 35 minutes that I have, I plan to frame the interaction in this way. First of all, let's try to understand the neighborhood in terms of what it looks collectively. And then I use the term South Asia. I don't use the term Indian subcontinent. So I talk about South Asia. What does it look like? Why is it important, not just for us, but also for the world? What were some of the old premises on which India's interaction or relationship with this region was based on? So my take is that it's not that India has not tried taking along the neighborhood, but then there have been hits and misses. So what were some of the old premises? The latest premise that we have taken is neighborhood first, which perhaps could be the best way one could have articulated a vision for taking the neighborhood along, but even that appears to have stuck somewhere. So I will look at the premises which were there earlier. Somewhere in that line, where did the idea of regionalism in South Asia fit in? So, there was this organization called SARC. On paper, it still exists. The headquarters is there in Kathmandu. I do not know what the headquarters does. There are officers posted there, but they haven't had any major interaction for the last 10 odd years. So where does the idea of regional cooperation fit in? Or if regional cooperation doesn't really fit in, is there a possibility of what we also know as sub-regional cooperation? And then some pointers towards, okay, what is the way ahead? If everything is so complex, how do we move ahead given the new realities in our immediate neighborhood? And we all are aware of the internal political turmoil that almost each of the country is going through. So that is the broad framework of what I am going to touch upon as far as this interaction is concerned. So why is the neighborhood, why is the South Asian subcontinent important? I'm not talking about neighborhood now. South Asia important. Why is it important? Of which we are, of course, a very, very significant part. South Asia contains 1/5 of the world's total population. So I'm a teacher. I teach this paper on government politics in South Asia. So my introductory sentence always begins with this, that South Asia is home to almost 1/5 of the world's humanity. So a place which has 20% of the world's population, how can you just ignore it? South Asia also is a very, very significant human development challenge. 1/5 of the world's total poor still say in the South Asian region. Despite stories of success here and there, the aggregate picture in South Asia is still very challenging. But then there is an optimistic story also. If you look at the overall pattern of economic growth in South Asia, of which, of course, India has been the driver, Economic growth in South Asia in the last 10-15 years, despite global recession, has been fairly consistent. So in that sense, I mean, South Asia is still seen as a magnet for potential growth. The demographic dividend in South Asia is, if reaped in a proper manner, is a very significant opportunity. So in that sense, it's a region which nobody can ignore. Now let's try and look at South Asia within, and that's where India and the neighborhood comes in. When we talk about our neighborhood, of course, there has been a certain historical juncture, historical context in which, in the post-colonial period, new fault lines emerged, borders emerged, which disconnected the historical, cultural, and geographical continuity that had existed between countries. And this created political trajectories which were autonomous in these individual countries. So when it came to India's foreign policy making vis-a-vis these countries, we had to have a certain framework. And the foreign policy framework that guided India's relations with her neighbor, I would say, in the initial 25, 30 years was a particular notion that we often use in our academic literature called geostrategic unity of the South Asian subcontinent. We felt that the security and stability of the entire South Asian region should be seen as being linked with each other. It is united. So if South Asia remains secure, safe from external influences, that would also amount to India's own security. So if our neighborhood gets penetrated by external forces which may be inimical to India's interests, indirectly that would also affect India's interest. So our larger foreign policy posturing vis-a-vis these countries, therefore, was premised on pushing this idea that the unity of the entire subcontinent is connected. And somewhere down the line, it's India's responsibility to make sure that the subcontinent remains secure. However, this perception was not always liked, appreciated by the smaller countries. There were times when even of course, Pakistan always had its own independent perception of the way it would have wanted to conduct this foreign policy. But even smaller countries like Nepal at times asserted their sovereignty. They tested waters at times by being closer to China, stating that no, we are kind of a sovereign nation, therefore we should have the independence of deciding what we want to do. Similar happened with Bangladesh subsequently, once Bangladesh came into existence. I would not be wrong to say that India's involvement in the Sri Lankan ethnic crisis in the 80s also happened to a great extent. Of course, there were domestic factors which motivated why India became concerned with what was happening to Tamils. But there was a very significant external dimension as well. If we had not intervened at the time when we intervened, there was a possibility that external players would have started playing a greater role. So in that sense, I would say that the first phase of India's engagement, posturing, or management of relations with the South Asian countries was thrust more from the perspective of maintaining this geostrategic unity of the South Asian subcontinent. And unfortunately, that perception did not really carry fairly well with other countries. So one can debate whether there could have been an alternative. It was a very different world altogether at that time. The Cold War realities existed. So we should always judge our leaders by the times that they faced. I mean, it's very easy for us to criticize leadership at a particular point of time by looking at the lens today. But I think as IR scholars, we should not make that mistake. We should always look at the context in which decisions are made. So that was at one level. We also had a different context in the 1990s as transition in political leadership took place. You all must have heard of Gujarat Doctrine when I.K. Gujral was the foreign minister. He became a proponent of the idea that India, being a bigger country, should extend greater concessions, should give more opportunities to the smaller countries, and not expect the same from them. So unilateral concessions based on non-reciprocity became the mantra at that point of time, which presented a more benign role of India as far as our smaller neighbors were concerned. Of course, the idea was good. Nobody denied that. Based on Gujarat's own idealist thinking in terms of taking the neighborhood along. But then this idea also was a rather short-lived idea. I mean, but did not really see a major thrust of this doctrine emerging at the ground level, because this was also the time which created huge political frictions between countries at that juncture. And 90s was a very, very, one can say, divided decade. You had tensions in Nepal. The LTT crisis was gradually unfolding. Of course, Pakistan has been a permanent case. So Gujarat Doctrine, therefore, was a good ideological reference point, yet not really having much at the fundamental level. I would say even Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, during his tenure, carried forward that legacy, but then he gave a slightly different reference point. And we often look at borders as the critical dividing lines between countries, and borders are problematic as far as South Asia is concerned. India is the one country which shares borders with all the other countries, whereas no other country has a common border vis-a-vis each other. So naturally, borders become a very critical reference point. So Manmohan Singh projected this view that borders should become the meeting points rather than dividing lines. If that kind of a logic could be pushed forward, and communities could be created across borders where there is greater flow of goods, services, people, maybe that would help diffuse the tensions that emerge. So the idea of borders, which would become meeting points rather than dividing lines. And therefore connectivity became a key proposition during his time. And the SARC summits, as and when they happened, also took up several connectivity projects. Coming down to the current scenario, and I think when Prime Minister Modi articulated neighborhood first, that indeed was a very, very significant articulation that happened. We all know the landmark decision that was taken. I mean, on the first few days of his taking over, when all the SARC heads of states were invited for the swearing in. So SARCO optimists like me became very happy that, I mean, is this the turning point which we have been waiting for? And Prime Minister direct himself taking such a keen interest in this. But that was not to be, obviously, because SARC has this very, very peculiar clause that if for some reason the decisions which are being taken are not by consensus, then the SARC decisions are as good as dead. So if one country is not willing to either proceed with the summit or not go ahead with the decision, it can't be that minus that country, the other countries can come through. So it's either all seven or none. And India took the position that no, given the present realities of what happened subsequently, we are not going to engage with Pakistan. And in that sense, SARC as a regional organization became a victim to our own policy vis-a-vis Pakistan, because the next SARC summit was supposed to be held in Pakistan. And certainly Prime Minister could not be seen as going to Pakistan when some very, very disturbing incidents had taken place. And the SARC process, therefore, remains stuck there. And it has been stuck for the last 10 years. It's not that we have not followed the spirit of neighborhood first at the bilateral level. If you look at the trajectory for the last 10 years, India has been the first responder in the crisis that many of these countries have faced. All the countries realized that the help that India extended when COVID happened, even economic crisis. Sri Lanka faced a major economic crisis in 2022, 23. People were on streets, the government was deposed. The economic help that India gave to Sri Lanka was 3 times what the IMF gave Sri Lanka. And the present leadership in Sri Lanka still acknowledges it. Even though this leadership also comes from a very, very extreme orientation, which at one point of time saw India as a kind of from a very confrontational perspective. So it's not that India has not reached out to neighbors individually. So the essence of neighborhood first, we have followed. Disaster management. I mean, we've been there as a first responder. It's just that this bilateral emphasis has not really translated into the regional domain. And that perhaps is because the regional management of our relations within the region is still being identified with a SARC determined mechanism. So in that sense, the regional idea of taking the entire neighborhood along appears to be stuck. Have there been no alternatives? I wouldn't say that, because even though SARC has remained stuck, there have been ideas of sub-regional cooperation proposed. I mean, the ideas of minilateral gatherings, BIMSTEC, BBIM, these ideas also have been there. But then those of you who work on these sub-regional projects would perhaps confirm, even these ideas have not really taken off the ground in a very, very significant way. So ideas, yet in terms of translation, a lot still to be done. And as if all this was not enough, now we have a scenario where I think the political churning that is taking place in these countries is very, very unprecedented. And in certain cases, it's so unprecedented that it also runs the risk of affecting the bilateral engagements, economic engagements, investments that India has had vis-a-vis these countries. So in that sense, the political uncertainty that surrounds our neighborhood, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Nepal, I think a policy of wait and watch is the best policy that we can have at the moment, because we ourselves are not sure how the things are going to unfold. But even as we think of the new realities that will unfold, can we at least lay down a blueprint that, okay, we have seen the last 10 odd years of the regional idea not moving ahead. The sub-regional idea also is good on paper, but we are yet to see very remarkable results. The sub-regional ideas meant that areas in the proximity of, say, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, you could develop infrastructural projects on tourism, power, road transportation, those kinds of things, trade facilitation. So even that hasn't really taken off. So what do we do? I mean, should we wait for things to evolve, or should we perhaps try to make some new beginnings? So I was at a conference recently. I'm coming from Ranaghat, which is around 100 kilometers away from Calcutta. It was a local college. The theme of the conference was, I mean, these days, very, very big titles are chosen for conferences. You don't know where to start and where to end. So the theme was Vikasit Bharat, neighborhood first, and the role India can play in maintaining human rights, democracy, and security. So I suggested that, well, there could have been one seminar on each of these themes for 7. But the essence of it you can make out that they were interested in trying to know that if India becomes Vikasit, what will be our role as far as the emerging neighborhood is concerned. So I suggested, and we had a delegate from Maldives, a delegate from Nepal. So I said, there is a mini SARC already happening here. Of course, Bangladesh participant couldn't come because things are too volatile. So it became kind of a mini. So we said that let there be a Ranaghat declaration. And Ranaghat declaration said, which of course was my idea. I said that there used to be something called track 2 at one point of time. These days, the word track 2 has become a bit complicated. To the extent it is also viewed suspiciously, or very popularly. But I would say things like track 2, or a more popular name for that, peoples to peoples contact, also has a very significant strategic value, since I'm speaking in the midst of strategic experts. When relations are really bad between countries, or when there is a political regime change in a country, if we invest everything in one particular political party or political group, as it has happened in case of Bangladesh, we are often left with searching for new partners whom to negotiate with, because we don't have a constituency. If people to people's contacts are maintained, not across political groups or political parties, but across multiple constituents across, which could contain academia, business, non-governmental organizations. Of political parties can be a part, but rather than aligning ourselves with the political regimes, we should align ourselves with people across diverse spectrums. So even if the relations go wrong for some reason or the other, we would always have constituents whom you can always negotiate with, who can also become your eyes and ears on the ground. And that is what I mean when I say strategic. So peoples to peoples contact, which were very sought after at one particular point of time, indirectly also track 2, have stopped in the South Asian region for whatever reasons. I think perhaps a good way to begin could be that we should put a certain emphasis on reviving the track 2 process across diverse spectrums. I would say that people to people connect could also help in at times releasing the steam that often generates when it comes to bilateral ties. So that could be one starting point that could be there. And as and when political situation settles down in these countries, perhaps a kind of an environment could be created where other channels of communications across political spectrum also could be sustained. So that is one suggestion which Ranaghat Declaration gave. The other suggestion also was that even if you cannot really have the SARC process started all over again, you could still, and SARC Charter permits that, kind of a sub-regional emphasis within SARC, which India itself could push forward. And that is where recent happenings in Bangladesh become very, very significant. Bangladesh, I say that we are caught between these two legacies, two contested legacies. The Mujib legacy, with which India very closely associated with for right reasons, is almost now being disowned in Bangladesh. But then there is a Ziaur Rahman legacy also, founder of Bangladesh National Party, Khaleda Zia. And that legacy was that it was Ziaur Rahman who coined the idea of SARC. It was he who took personal interest in thinking that a framework like SARC perhaps could be quite useful for South Asian region. He individually wrote letters to the prime ministers. So I mean, there is this Zia legacy also, who also followed up on the 1971 Liberation War legacy. I mean, both were war heroes, just that they had differences with regard to how they perceived each other's role. So I think India could still try to reclaim the legacy. We need a strong constituency in Bangladesh at the moment. And somewhere down the line, and that's where I would like to know your response, because you are the strategic community. We should make a pitch for revival of the SARC process. We should not allow our Pakistan position to determine what the larger SARC process or procedure should have been. If we do that, my hunch is that at least we would have created one very strong foothold that at the moment is missing, at least in Bangladesh. Because the demand for creation of SARC came from smaller countries, not from India and Pakistan. We were quite reluctant initially, but as smaller countries pitched for it, we felt that no, how can we say no to something which actually in the long run could, we should not be seen as being the laggards. So this time again, I mean, smaller countries, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka are talking about revival. And my take is that India should take some steps forward in pushing forward that process. Pakistan, whether it wants to come along or not, I mean, it's a different matter altogether. So my take is that I think Pakistan is the easiest country to deal with as far as the neighborhood is concerned, because we know fairly consistently what is to be done. But with other countries, I think we have to have a more nuanced position. And starting off this people-to-people connect and a rethink on our SARC positioning is what I feel could be the building blocks for the new strategy that India could engage with. These are perhaps the reasons which still make me a SARCO optimist. Although my friends say that, well, we are talking about global positioning now. We are a leader of the South, global South, and you are still talking about SARC. I say that no, the building block to the global leadership has to begin from neighborhood itself. So I would say that the South Asian region, the neighborhood, is very significant strategically for what happens to us internally. Also, it is very important for us in order to achieve the larger goals that we look forward as far as the global level is concerned. So neighborhood therefore cannot be ignored, but you cannot have a one model, single model for all the countries. I mean, it has to be a very nuanced approach. Individual countries have unique issues, and therefore the way we engage with these countries also has to be very nuanced. So I just gave one example from Bangladesh with regard to what could be our re-entry point into Bangladesh. So these were some of the ideas that I just thought I would share with you. I don't know if I've finished 30 minutes.
Will cover when
I
we
think
action.
when we interact, more will come out. And I'm very keen to hear from you all in terms of what you feel about these ideas, whether you feel that I'm being still overtly idealist or optimist, or you feel that no, there is some pragmatic sense also So thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity. And I really look forward to the Q&A and the comments.